Hello and welcome to another standard video. Today we're going to try to rank up quickly using this green splash red Badgermole Cub, a ramp deck. This is the card that's all the rage now, incredibly powerful. A 2/2, when it enters we get to Earthbend 1, turn a land into a 0/0 creature that gets one additional +1 counter, and now whenever we tap a creature for mana, including our Earthbended land, we get to make an additional green mana. Badgermole Cub especially good in multiples, because the effect will stack. So now with 2 cubs, a creature will make 2 additional green mana, and of course our deck is filled with mana dorks, which will now produce additional mana with a cub, starting at 1 mana with of course Llanowar Elves, another perk of playing a green deck. Then the Gene Pollinator is not quite as good as Llanowar Elves by itself, but alongside a Badgermole Cub it's still great, since we can play Pollinator, turn 2 cub, tap the cub with a Pollinator, and then still have access to 2 mana, which can then cast another cub or some other 2-drop as well. Then we also have the full set of a Bramble Familiar, which is just a mana creature tapping for green, but we can also use the Adventure Fetch Quest for 7 mana if we already have a lot of mana thanks to all the cubs and other mana creatures in play. And then if we mill 7 cards, we get to find a creature, enchantment or land from among them and put it onto the battlefield. Best case scenario, we mill Craterhoof Behemoth, which is a 5/5 with haste. When it enters, gives all our creatures trample and +X/+X, where X is the number of creatures we control. So this is the perfect finisher in a deck full of mana creatures, since we naturally end up going wide with lots of small bodies, and now we get to pump them up and also of course have the mana to cast or find Craterhoof Behemoth with Fetch Quest in the first place. Otherwise it's 8 mana to cast, so we even get a 1 mana discount with Fetch Quest. Then there's a Tender Wild Guide, can also play it for 2 mana, or if we have a bit of spare mana we can cast it with Offspring, in which case we'll get the additional 1/1 version that can also still tap for mana, or we can tap it to put a +1 counter on it, which can also come in handy. Then a Leyline Weaver is not the reason we're splashing red, since we can easily cast it in a mono green deck, but it's still quite good as a 2/2 with reach that can make either red or green, and whenever we cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater we get to untap it. So if we cast a Fetch Quest or Craterhoof Behemoth, we'll get to untap it, which is quite relevant since that's potentially 8 or 9 trample damage with Craterhoof's ability. And then we also get to untap it if we cast Uroboroid, a 4 mana 1/3. Every turn that goes by we'll get more +1 counters on the entire team, so this can also get out of hand very quickly, great in multiples, and also very good in combination with Craterhoof if we're lucky enough to cast both, as we'll now be able to pump the team with Craterhoof's ability, in turn growing Uroboroid, which will now give a massive boost to the entire team, and that one will be permanent in the form of +1 counters, but it's usually enough to just win the game on the spot. And then Uroboroid's also quite synergistic with Tyvar, which gives the deck another win condition and mana sink. For 5 mana, creatures we control get +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the greatest power among creatures we control. So Tyvar by himself can give the team +3/+3, but especially with Uroboroid in play, we can now increase its power and then give the team even more +1 counters going forward. And then Tyvar can also become indestructible by tapping another untapped creature, so it has that built-in protection as well. And since this deck is all about having a consistent draw with Badgermole Cub and eventually one of our finishers, it makes sense to have a few sorceries that can help find those creatures more consistently, which is why I've got 2 copies of Commune with Beavers, looks at the top 3 to reveal artifact, creature or land to put into our hand. And the main reason to splash red in this archetype, could also go mono green of course, is for Breakout, which lets us look at the top 6 cards of our library. We can reveal a creature from among them. If the mana value was 2 or less, we can put it into play with haste if we'd like, otherwise it goes into our hand. So this can find our finishers if we don't find anything else, but this is another consistent way of finding our Badgermole Cub, and finding a mana creature with haste is still relevant since we can immediately tap these for mana to keep emptying our hand. And then to make up for the red splash, we do need to have a few red-green dual lands in the mana base. So Stomping Ground with Thornspire, which is also going to make both colors if we have any of our multiversal passages, which will enter and turn into a basic type. So those can also support each other nicely. So yeah, that's our deck. Now let's jump into some games and see how the deck does. Okay, we're on the draw. Our hand is functional. Ideally find Badgermole Cub, or maybe just a 3rd land. Opponent on a black sacrifice build. Well, we drew the cub. I'll take another one. Otherwise, probably the Llanowar Elves now. Does Cub survive against Black-White Sacrifice? There's a chance. They typically have a lot of creatures and not a ton of actual removal. So let's give it a shot. Sephiroth, yeah, that makes sense. So seeing the new scavengers in action gets a +1 counter. When it dies, can get something back out of the graveyard. So our opponent also curving out nicely. So I could just play Ouroboros, although with double Leyline Weaver, I kind of like just going with a bunch of mana creatures here, which will next turn untap after I cast Ouroboros. So just play a pair of these. And then next turn we can go incredibly wide. Alright, opponent's also on the airship build. And they can immediately sack a creature to make another copy, so then next turn we might be threatened in the air as well. I mean, if Sephiroth is attacking here, I can double block it. Which is probably still reasonable. For 1 mana, can't think of too much that can go wrong. But the opponent gets another airship. They had a nesting bot left. So they can croon airship on defense as well. Yeah, we could be in trouble. Can definitely play Ouroboros, but is that going to be good enough? Yeah, the end game is probably still Bramble Familiar, hope to get Craterhoof. So, tap this for green. I mean, Ouroboros is happening. Untap Weaver, which I'll probably need on defense to maybe block an airship. So then, I guess I just go Wild Guide Lanor Elves. Playing this with Offspring would not untap the Weaver since the mana value is still only 2. Alright, so we get Ouroboros trigger. No one can attack into the 4/4 airship, which your opponent can crew. And then next turn I gotta hope for a Craterhoof if I'm not dead yet. Voice of Victory is fine. So they're gonna crew double airship. Attack with scavengers. I'm gonna have to block 2 of those. Take 4 down to 3, and then hope for the best. So I have enough mana for a Craterhoof. And on this board it's 5 creatures, everything +5/+5, and then with Ouroboros it should be plenty. Yeah, let's see what happens. And we got a Craterhoof, alright. Trigger Ouroboros, and this will be plenty. Super close game here against Black-White Sacrifice, and yeah, the Sandbender Scavengers definitely impressed as well. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with a fine hand. And we've got our Badgermole Cub. Commune to find more creatures. Right, black mid-range or control deck could give us some trouble, since they'll likely have a bunch of removal. So what do we like? Maybe Tyvar as something that can turn indestructible, pairs well with Ouroboros. if we get a chance to deploy both. Still gonna start with Badgermole Cub, because if it does survive, it'll give us the biggest advantage. And I can maybe wait to play Wild Guide with Offspring. Cub is gone. Opponent unable to cast a cub. Alright, second Craterhoof is a little awkward. So I can play Tyvar, but it's not going to be with protection. I think that's still okay given the Ouroboros in hand and the Wild Guide. I would prefer to play with Offspring. If they use another removal spell on Pummeler, so be it. Alright, Bloodletter is still acceptable. So they are on a demon variant. Okay, now Breakout. Is it better than just going for Ouroboros? Yeah, if we break out and find, let's say, another cub, after shocking in Stomping Grounds, I would be able to target a land, still have access to 4 mana and still play Ouroboros. So there is some upside here. Alright, let's try it. And there we go. Play Ouroboros, immediately get a bunch of counters. Tyvar can attack. And then next turn, we'll see what happens. Okay, maybe activate Tyvar, which also pumps Ouroboros even more. Opponent does have the second Bloodletter, so now we have to be careful not to take lethal. Because they have 3 turns into 6 turns into 12. So then I'm actually forced to block Tiny Bones. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, I'm not close to casting Craterhoof if I were to block with Ouroboros, so I think we just block with the Badgermole. And then, yeah, it's gonna be close. So the damage from the shock lands making a difference, because otherwise we can afford to take the hit. Opponent does have another blocker as well, so that's going to complicate matters. Did draw an untapped land. So I can activate Tyvar, but then I'm only pumping 2 creatures up. And I'm still taking lethal next turn. So yeah, I think I'm dead regardless. Still gonna activate here, since it's probably the best play I have. So it is a lethal attack, but opponent can just block with Cecil. If they didn't have Cecil, they're forced to jump with Bloodletter, but I still take 4 next turn. Ooh, wow, opponent blocked with Cecil, but forgot about the ability that loses them 2 life. Yeah, that will do it. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw with functional hands. Could significantly improve with a Badgermole Cub as usual. Okay, maybe hit it with a Breakout. So our opponent might be playing a similar deck, just a blue-green variant, which does have access to Dryneth to copy some of its creatures, maybe some other cards as well. So yeah, I can break out here. Doesn't matter too much if I tap the elves or not. Did find the cub. And then the elves can now tap for 2. Still play probably the Wild Guide. Although could have also saved it to play with Offspring, and for now just play Pollinator, which can tap the cub. But if they have removal, probably better to get the actual mana creature in play. They may not have Craterhoof to go over the top, so that can potentially break the mirror wide open. And there we see the Drowner, one of the perks of splashing blue, giving you a bit of interaction. Okay, Drowner taps Wild Guide. In response, we can still put a +1 counter on it. And another Drowner goes for Llanowar Elves. Fair enough. Well, despite all their efforts here, I can still cast Uroboroid. No attacks for now. Alright, opponent's got their own, so they are ahead on board, but we're the first ones with the Uroboroids. So we'll see if we can follow it up with anything exciting. Craterhoof is going to have to wait a turn, but we are close. No need to trade off any creatures here. Because yeah, next turn I can just hoof for the win, so I just need to avoid dying. That's fine. They can draw a card. Alright, so hoof is gonna help us go over the top. A second Uroboroid would have been nice too. But yeah, let's see here. So I can tap Llanowar Elves, and then this is 7, this is 8. And smash. The trample also helps. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. Double Verge in our opener is pretty awkward. The hand is good if I just draw any green source, but as is, I don't think I can keep. This is fine. So, do I just get rid of a land, or do I get rid of maybe Tyvar? Tyvar is good with Uroboroid to help go over the top. A land I'm most likely to draw in the near future. Yeah, let's try this. I'll be less likely to cast a turn 3 Uroboroid this way. Opponent with turn 1 Swamp, turn 2 Swamp. Does the Weaver survive? Seems unlikely. So yeah, against a removal heavy deck, I don't mind having a more threat dense hand. Better Triumph. Also want to ideally play Tyvar with another creature in play, so that I do not lose Tyvar to another removal spell as easily. Can attack for 1. Alright, now it's probably Uroboroid time. And then we still have to be scared of a board wipe, maybe at 5 mana. But maybe we can end the game before that happens. Alright, Reality Fulcrum. It's 2 swamps. So what happens if I cast another Uroboroid here? I'll have to tap my Stomping Ground, so then I only have 2 attackers. I can first resolve this Uroboroid trigger, and then everyone gets another 3 counters on top of that. So then it's basically +5. This hits for 8, this hits for 7. 15 puts my opponent to 1. But then if they have the board wipe, I'm left with nothing. Yeah, you know what, sometimes you gotta go for it. And I'm gonna hold the Pollinator, but wow, opponent scoops it up, so I guess they did not have the board wipe after all. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play. We have a hand that's missing something like a cub, but with Commune and Breakout we've got a chance of finding it. Because yeah, we're gonna need to offspring the Wild Guide in order to set up a Craterhoof. Found the cub. Don't have to play it on turn 2. Opponent also on a green deck. Could just cast a 2-mana Wild Guide. And then next turn, ideally draw land. Upside of Cub is if maybe I draw another Cub. Or hit one with Breakout. Still don't know exactly what my opponent is playing. Might be the Graveyard deck. Yep, Town Greeter. So we have to watch out for Kivero, maybe. Although, 3 steps. Typically not played in those decks, so... yeah, I'm not sure anymore. Now it's gotta be Cub into maybe a Breakout. And then Bramble Familiar can still tap for mana right away. Play Wild Guide. And yeah, we're in a pretty good spot to cast our finishers. And yeah, does seem like a Kivero deck, and they milled the Bringer. Now they cannot grab Kivero, but they might have one in hand for next turn. So can I just win the game here? I can cast a Craterhoof. It's going to require me to tap pretty much all of my creatures. I'll have 3 left that can attack, with 6 total, so plus 6. That's 8, 16, plus another 11. Yeah, that should just be lethal. So glad we drew the land here, because otherwise we would have been a couple points short. Turn 4 kill, beating a potential turn 4 Kivero. So being on the play can make all the difference. And yeah, this also showed the relevance of Breakout giving the creature haste, being able to immediately tap our mana creature for mana, especially with a Cub in play. Can just speed up the deck by an extra turn. Our opponent did not seem very happy with a turn 4 Craterhoof, which is understandable if you're holding the Kivero and you thought you would have an easy win. But yeah, there we go. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a very promising hand. Pollinator into Cub, immediately cast another Cub. And then we're well on our way to casting a Craterhoof. Well, let's see what we're up against. This hand should be very good in any sort of mirror match. And yeah, opponent's on a green deck with a Recruit. So I like my chances. Is this a turn 3 Craterhoof coming up? They've got their own Cub. I'll take 2. Alright. So I could break out first, or we can immediately cast Craterhoof. I would have 2 attackers. So it's not guaranteed lethal, I don't think. 3, 4, 5, 6, 11 plus 8 is 19. So our opponent could survive, fall to 1. I mean, that's still pretty good. Or we can break out. And then if I hit another mana creature, it would guarantee lethal. So that's maybe better. Alright, a Leyline Weaver will do. Can tap that for mana. And that will also untap with a Craterhoof. And that's a lot of damage on turn 3. Yeah, this deck might be a bit of a problem. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a fine hand. And we've got the turn 3 into turn 4 Ouroboros strat. Doesn't take much to disrupt it, but we'll see. Turn 1 Swamp. Casted the rest, that would be fine. Alright, there you go. You get to see what's coming. Still gonna play the Weaver, since it untaps with Ouroboros getting cast. If they remove Weaver, they'll slow us down, or they can save their removal for Ouroboros itself, in which case I could still decide to Offspring a Wild Guide instead. Alright, opponent goes for Bandit's Talents. I'll discard a Wild Guide. Craterhoof may not get cast this game, but yeah, we immediately get some counters. Healthy attack for 5. If they don't remove Ouroboros, they're probably dead. Saboteur is not going to be good enough. And our opponent explodes, especially knowing about the second copy coming in here. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a functional hand. Ideally find one of our finishers with a commune. But it's hard to turn down a turn 1 Llanowar Elves. Because we keep harping on about Badgermole Cub, but of course we also have the luxury of turn 1 Elves. So our opponent Black-White Sacrifice can commune first, see what we hit. Craterhoof, well, that's something to work towards. Play Weaver. Next turn, maybe Offspring on the Wild Guide. So this should be an okay matchup, both decks kind of building up their board, opponent trying to win by draining us to death. But since we already have the Craterhoof, we can just ignore all their small chum blockers and kind of go over the top. And drawing another Elves is helpful. So next turn I could already cast a Craterhoof, potentially. Untaps the Weaver, so that's an extra attacker. And our opponent curving out into Sephiroth. So their draw has been totally fine. But yeah, the Llanowar Elves speeding up our deck significantly. So if I were to cast Craterhoof, it would be a big attack, but our opponent can maybe still recover from it. I guess I have to deal with a 5/5 Trampler as well. Yeah, I think I actually do just set up for another turn. The Wild Guides can accumulate counters. And then next turn it should be more than enough. The Black-White deck doesn't have any discard spells as far as I know. And I don't see them winning the game right now either. They should be pointing their removal at Weavers, since those untap with Craterhoof. So I think they're more valuable than the Wild Guide, despite it maybe picking up a +1 counter. Our opponent knows what they're up against. Gets back Infestation Sage, Sephiroth can attack if it wants. And then make sure to get another counter here. A land helps. And smash. Yeah, this felt better than going for a good but not lethal attack last turn and still giving the opponent a chance to maybe get back into the game. Sweet, on to the next one. Okay, we're on the draw. We've got a pretty strong hand. Can either Elves into Cub or even Pollinator into Cub. If our opponent's going to use removal, I guess we may as well let them use it on the pollinator. So mono black will certainly have some spot removal for us. So I can go Cub into Breakout, for instance. Or we can take a slower approach and just go Wild Guide into Elves. It's going to be without Offspring. And then next turn, hopefully just unload a bunch of Cubs. If we hit another one with a Breakout. Yeah, that seems fine. One potential drawback is if our opponent's running Duress, they can snipe the Breakout. Now they're just gonna maybe take out the Wild Guide, which saves the Cub from getting removed. Alright, nowhere to run. So I think our patience will pay off here, because now with the Cub I'll immediately have access to 2 additional mana. Does our opponent keep up removal once again? They do. Alright, so yeah, still gonna go for this. Play Badgermole. And then in response to removal I can still make some mana. Well, I did not get the chance to float mana in response. So I guess I should have been in full control there. That's unfortunate. Well, we'll let that be a lesson to you as well. So I missed out on 2 additional mana. Yeah, that's unfortunate. Well, let's just break out and then see what we get. Ouroboros. Okay. Yeah, normally the game's good at holding priority when you have something you can activate, but not this time. Realm can eventually make spirit tokens. Cecil already transformed, since they paid a bunch of life to the Bitter Triumph. And now Bloodletter. So yeah, we're up against it here. Can play Ouroboros and then still play a Leyline Weaver, which once it gets the counter here, we'll actually have an okay block on the Bloodletter. If they have removal, we're dead, because I can just clear the Weaver. Bit of a strange attack. I see, tragic trajectory so they can finish off the Weaver. That makes more sense. But why did Cecil not get in there? I guess they want to block her back. And they have lethal next turn regardless. Can play another Ouroboros, but that's not going to be good enough here. First we want to resolve the +2, so the other one turns into a +3. Well, I guess we force them to chump, but our opponent still has us in the air with the Bloodletter and the Annex. So yeah, let that be a lesson to you. If you have a Cub, go full control, because otherwise you're gonna miss out on some mana. Which, yeah, could have certainly made the difference here, since this ended up being a super close game. Opponent had another Annex anyways. GG's. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with functional hands. Could play Pollinator first, but I think Helena Elf still has a little bit more upside. Especially if we want to go for a breakout. Can break out, maybe hit a cub. Helena Elf makes 2 mana, play both Pollinators. That would be the dream. Mountain might have a removal for elves. The cadets, I see. It's a bit of a firebending deck. Okay, so I'm gonna take 2 here. And did not hit a cub. Do have a lot of creatures to choose from. I imagine it's the Wild Guide over Bramble Familiar, which I guess there's a chance I can pick it back up later. Yeah, maybe that's better. Although against red, the ability to add counters could be useful too, I suppose. Double Pollinator. Hope they don't keep up a 3 damage instant for Ouroboros. And then ideally I can top deck more finishers. If not, we might want to look into picking up the Familiar. We'll see. If Ouroboros lives, it can still single-handedly take over. Opponent does have the Student, so that one's pretty scary if they can pump it up. Could one-hit KO us out of nowhere. But I get to play Ouroboros. And then do I want to set up any attacks? I wouldn't be able to activate Familiar yet. It could benefit me to keep some blockers back. Just attack with Familiar and leave the Pollinators back in case I need to block a Student. Alright, Challenger step 1, so they're not going too hard on the Student here. Alright, never mind, Wild Rides. 3 additional power. So they'll have 5 mana they can spend at instant speed. They might have a way of doubling the Student's power. Does also have prowess. So could double block the Student, or I can just chump with a Pollinator and kind of accept my losses. Because if I double block, they prowess or have a pump spell that pumps toughness. That wouldn't be great for me, because losing a creature when we have Ouroboros is pretty relevant. Do I have lethal on the way back? I'll get 2 additional counters. I mean, we're getting close. Abandon attachments for starters. They might be able to give the Student trample as well. Cadets is active, can now also firebend. Yeah, I'm glad I didn't double block, but yeah, now Might of the Meek tramples. So if they have a way to give double strike or double power, I could still be dead. Damage happens, I fall to 6. Floating mana goes away. Sure. And draw Craterhoof, which I cannot cast. So let's do some math. If I move to combat, get 2 additional counters on all my creatures. Opponent can chump the 5-powered one and then still only take 12. So that's not lethal. I can pick up Familiar, but we're pretty far from Fetch Quest, so that doesn't accomplish much. So yeah, this could be just kind of chill on defense, grow my team, take it from there. Or I can get 1 attack in with Ouroboros, which I don't really want to block with anyway. And hope not to die to a flying slick shot. And then I could still activate Bramble Familiar here, discarding Craterhoof. Although I'm not too far from casting it. Pollinator taps Ouroboros, so then I just need an untapped land. And then Craterhoof plus Ouroboros is more than enough to cross the finish line. Opponent's getting back Wild Ride. Trigger Challenger, hits a land. Goes to attackers. So they'll still have mana from Cadets, potentially. Nope, just Challenger attacking. Well, I have to block, so then I could block with Familiar, pick it back up. Although if I set up a trade, they should be pretty dead on the way back here, so I don't think I bother. Take my turn. And go to attackers. And smash. Yeah, it was a close one. They got the opportunity to go off with Firebending Students, but couldn't quite get there. On to the next one. Okay, we're on the play with a decent hand. Elves into Cub. Hope that Breakout delivers. And an Ouroboros, a nice curve topper, so we're kind of doing it. In this case, I do think I want to first tap the Elves, so we can Earthbend onto the Stomping Ground, and then I can still break out. Finding a Familiar, which can then also make 2 mana, versus Craterhoof. Still kind of far from casting Craterhoof. Let's just grab Familiar. And then I can commune and find, well, looks like our opponent's had enough already. That's a pretty explosive turn 2, understandably. And next turn Ouroboros was going to be a nice cherry on top as we get to rank up once again. So yeah, this red-green Badgermole Cub ramp deck is pretty busted, so we'll see how long Badgermole Cub remains illegal in Standard. But they're usually pretty slow to ban brand new cards, so we'll get at least a few months with it before anything happens. And yeah, especially in Best of 1, where it's all about having a fast, linear strategy, this seems like a perfect home for it. Now in Best of 3, things will get a bit harder, since there will be more interaction, especially after sideboard. You can expect more spot removal and board wipes, so then it's not going to be as easy to ramp out a Craterhoof. But in Best of 1, where you want to rank up quickly, this seems like the best deck to do it with. So for now, I want to thank you for watching, hope you enjoyed, and as always, have a nice day.